Luann jittered with excitement as she hid behind the curtain, causing it to rustle. After making her triumphant debut at the Courteval Cave, she was called back to encall the performance for the following week, which she agreed with no hesitation. This time around, her entire family, parents included, was in attendance, and she knew that they'd be expecting a lot from her. Regardless, she reassured herself that she'll just stick and get stuck to the strongest material and she'll be fine. She allowed herself to peek through the curtain, and she was a little disappointed to find that her family was sitting far too back for her to see. Granted, she was there to make everyone in the audience laugh, but she was hoping to see the reactions of those closest to her. Nothing lifted her spirits than a cackle from her loving, supportive family. Regardless, she just told herself that they'll have plenty of time to praise her after the show. A light, bouncing piano jingle started up, and that was Luann's cue to storm on stage. Finishing her biggest smile, she strutted through the curtains, snatched up the microphone, and waited for the jiggle to fade out. Once it did, she opened to a tired and true classic. I just flew from Royal Woods, and boy, my arms are tired. As an experienced performer, Luann had gotten the habit of allowing herself to pause after a joke, to give the audience time to laugh. This time, though, there was no response during that pause. Not a single peep from the audience was heard. Luann wasn't expecting her opening line to bring the house down, but she was expecting more of a reaction than this. I guess that one doesn't really work, since I'm still in Royal Woods, Luann reasoned to herself. Let me try something else. Sorry if I'm a little late, she said. I spent a few hours in the grind lock, and I left Congress. Once again, Luann's quip was met with dead silence in the audience. Tough crowd, she muttered, tugging the collar of her blouse. Okay, political humor's not cutting it. Maybe I'll just stick to my usual material. How many psychiatrins does it take to change a light bulb? Just one, but the light bulb has to want to change. Again, nary a sound was heard from the audience, and the Courteval portal was utterly bereft in the noise that Luann swore heard a faucet dropping upstairs in the bathroom. Truth be told, Luann was a little puzzled. As a performer, she too was no stranger with the experience of bombing, but she never had encountered the audience this apathetic. Furthermore, the audience at the Courteval portal during the last performance was quite lively. What happened between then and now? Whatever the case was, Luann decided to soldier on. What kind of a music do mummies like to listen to? Rap. Usually a pun with a bad word would at least provoke a groan if she was told at home in front of her siblings. But then once again, her audience responded to her joke with stony, unflinching silence. At the very least, she thought her family in attendance would muster up to the occasional giggle for her sake. But apparently she was wrong. What's brown and sticky? A stick, she spouted off. What do you get when you drop a piano from a mine shaft? A flat miner. Why do seagulls fly over the seas? Because if they flew over the bay, they'd be called bagels. Joke after joke after joke, each one delivered with the less patience than the last. But no matter what she did, nothing seemed to be breaking the audience over the vow of silence. Geez Louise, what is wrong with you people? She spat. What do I have to do to get a reaction out of you? Drop my panties and start slamming the clam? Oh, come on, I'm a minor. I just got offered to touch myself in front of you. Doesn't that offend you? At this point, Luann had given up trying to make the audience laugh and was ready to settle for any kind of response. No matter how negative, a gasp, a boo, a hiss, a cry off, get off the stage, loser, anything. Do you feel good about yourselves? Luann asked, giving the whole audience a crowd a scowl and crossing her arms. This is not how you should have decided to spend your Saturday night? Is this your idea of fun it is? You know what? I don't even have to do this, but you all left me no choice. Luann threw the mic stand aside and stepped downstage, cracking her knuckles. It's time to go Don Rickles on all of you. Luann jumped off the stage and stopped over to a well-dressed gentleman sitting at a table nearby. The spotlight was still projected on the stage, so she could scarcely see him through the darkness. But at one point, she really didn't care. Hey everyone, look at this bozo over here, she cried, Her voice seized by Verital. Got all dressed up in his best suit just so he can come to my show and daydream. Gosh, I wonder how much he's talking about. Counting his money? Much to her frustration, her words elicited to no reaction whatsoever from the man. He didn't even turn his head. He just continued to sit with his hands folded on his lap, eyes pointed towards the stage. Answer me! Luann then reared back open her hand and threw it forward, giving him a sharp slap across the face. The stinging pain shot up through her fingers as soon as they struck with the surface, which, to much to her shock, was cold and unyielding and gravelly. What the heck? She yelped, clutching her aching hand. What are you? Once the pain on her hand died down, she reached it back over towards the man's face and rubbed her fingers against it. Icy, rigid, coarse. She was haranguing a statue. With her heart rate accelerating, Luann looked to her right, saw a middle-aged lady in a sundress who, at the same table, looked like a gentleman, sat completely motionless. She reached over to her trembling hand towards her, caressed her face, and found it around just to be as stony as from the gentleman. Luann bolted from the table, knocking over a couple of empty chairs in the process, and started running towards the chortle portal, in search of the single audience member who could explain what was happening. Much to her dismay, there was nary of a person in attendance who was any more lifelike than the gentleman she confronted. Table after table of inanimate chunks of granite, she sitting there in their chancel of hands, folded across her chiseled laps. "Mom? Dad?" she called into the darkness, suddenly remembering that her family had come to see her. "Lori? Luna? What's going on?" But even after she repeated herself again and again, even calling out from every one of her siblings' name, nobody from her family answered her call. "Am I the only one here alive?" she thought. "How could they not hear me?" The young comedian would just get her answer once she arrived at their table. What she saw caused her throat to dry up and start to swell shut, leaving her short of breath. Everyone at the table, both her parents and siblings, was all sitting in the exact same pose, feet planted onto the floor, hands folded on their lap. None of them were even moving so much as a millimeter. With her entire body convulsing, Luann grabbed herself by the wrist and forced her hand over towards her mother's face, desperate to reassure herself that this was all some sort of elaborate prank. But her mother's skin, as she feared, was unmistakable texture of cold, lifeless marble. Before she could even start the process of what happened, she heard a voice that come from the stage, that one that sounded very similar to her own. "Looks like you've got an audience bored stiff." Luann gasped and she whipped around towards the stage. To her bewilderment, she saw the stage spotlight was shining down on her dummy, Mr. Coconuts, who's been gripping the microphone in his tiny hands. "I can't say I blame them," sneered Mr. Coconuts. "You have to be a real dummy to come to this show. I should know." Luann, still reeling from the shock from seeing her family petrified, barely managed to eke out a retort. That's not funny." Mr. Coconuts rolled his paint-on eyes. "Oh, right, because you're the comedian expert here, and you left everyone in the club stone-faced." The dummy's lower jaw bobbed up and down as she let out a haughty laugh. "Get it? Stone-faced? Ha 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 ha." Each laugh made her feel like a stinging needle piercing Luann's heart. As her breathing became more labored, the young teen's face scrunched up and the tears tended to swell up in her eyes. Shut up!" she cried. "Stop laughing at me." "But I thought you wanted to be laughed at," taunted Mr. Coconuts, who followed up with his remark with another string of male-violent laughter. Then, just to further establish his sadistic glee, he started dancing around the jig on stage, hopping up and down, while somehow keeping his gaze perpetually focused on Luann. "Luann, this isn't fun. Nay, Luann isn't fun, nay," he sang. "Shut up!" Luann screamed, with tears running down her face. "Shut up and go away!" To her surprise, her words were actually heeded the dummy, as he stopped dancing and planted his feet on the floor, and his arms fell to the sides. "If you insist." A thick fume of white smoke rose up from the stage, and the smoke dissipated. Mr. Coconuts was nowhere to be seen. Luann was relieved to hear the teasing stop, but without any relief of what she felt clenched to once was thick, suffocating fog of the silence started to settle back in. Wait, I changed my mind, she cried, running up to the stage. Come back! Come back! The sound of her voice echoing throughout the halls, only the club to be served by the reinforced, now vast and empty as it was. What was supposed to be a place of merriment and leisure was all lifeless, endless abyss. Luann just stopped before the stage and dropped to her knees, wrapping her shivering arms around herself and choking out labored sobs. The girl couldn't bring herself to get back up on stage and face the endless sea of dead, stone-carved eyes, incapable of displaying even the faintest sign of amusement. Come back, she whimpered, falling into a fetal position. I don't want to be alone. Her sobbing degenerated into weeping, the full-out bawling, as if she somehow caused the statues to stir by crying loudly enough. I don't want to be alone, she wailed into the darkness, desperate to be heard. I don't want to be alone. The sound of her own crying was the last thing she heard before she woke up.